February 2026. Deep in the quiet of a remote observatory, an infrared telescope array picks up heat signatures that defy every known catalogue of orbital objects. Not missiles, not aircraft, not even conventional satellites firing thrusters. These are fleeting, erratic thermal blooms appearing and vanishing in lower Earth orbit, clustered in patterns no human engineering should produce. The data streams straight to classified servers tied to a network few people even know exists. Starlink's hidden infrared sensors, part of the Starshield constellation, captured it first. Real-time, unfiltered. And since those detections began flooding in late 2025, one institution that should be shouting from the rooftops about any orbital anomaly has said absolutely nothing. NASA remains silent. Over 9,800 satellites now swarm low Earth orbit. Starlink dominates, carrying more than 65% of everything humanity has placed up there. Most deliver broadband to remote corners of the planet. But woven through that vast internet mesh hides something far more ominous: Starshield. Hundreds of specialized spacecraft, launched in waves since mid-2024, under a $1.8 billion classified agreement with the National Reconnaissance Office. These are not civilian relays. They carry wide-field infrared payloads capable of discriminating heat against the near-absolute zero of space with terrifying precision. A single hotspot on Earth's surface stands out like a flare in midnight. But these sensors also stare outward, into the void immediately around them. When the first unusual thermal events registered on Starshield arrays in late 2025, analysts expected conventional explanations. A tumbling upper stage venting residual propellant, a defunct satellite's battery overheating before catastrophic failure. But the signatures refused to match. Transient bursts of infrared energy, sometimes paired with minute velocity shifts, appearing in tight formations, then dispersing as if responding to an unseen stimulus. No radar returns accompanied them in many cases. No catalogued debris clouds followed, just heat, sudden, deliberate, and always in regions where Starlink satellites had just executed evasive maneuvers. The maneuvers themselves tell a story the public numbers barely hint at. In 2025 alone, Starlink spacecraft performed approximately 300,000 collision avoidance actions. That's roughly 1 million dodges across the constellation in a single year, up sharply from prior periods. Each maneuver burns precious propellant, stresses onboard systems, and requires split-second autonomous decisions based on tracking data shared with military space surveillance networks. Space debris experts note the rate borders on unsustainable for long-term operations. Yet the objects being avoided often lack persistent tracks. They appear on infrared, trigger avoidance protocols, then fade from detection. If these were ordinary fragments, the infrared signatures would linger, cooling slowly in vacuum. They don't. They wink out. Consider what infrared truly reveals in this environment. Against the cosmic background, any object with even modest thermal output becomes visible. A missile plume ignites like a searchlight. A jet engine leaves a trail. But an unknown object maneuvering in orbit without obvious propulsion. That requires energy. Energy leaves heat. Starshield's sensors, designed originally under proliferated architectures for birth-to-death tracking of hypersonic threats, excel at spotting precisely these deviations. The contract language buried in public disclosures mentions anomaly detection explicitly. Not just known threats, anomalies, heat sources that match no ephemeris, no launch manifest, no decay profile. One incident stands out: December 2025. A fresh Starlink satellite, barely weeks on orbit, suffers a catastrophic internal energetic release at 418 kilometers altitude. Not a micrometeoroid strike, not external debris. Telemetry suggests an onboard source powerful enough to vent tanks, scatter fragments, and drop the craft's orbit kilometers in hours. SpaceX calls it a propulsion anomaly. Independent assessments point to something more violent, an energetic event from within. Weeks later, the company announces a sweeping reconfiguration. Thousands of satellites descending from 550 kilometers to 480 kilometers over 2026. The stated reason: enhanced safety and denser atmospheric drag zones during solar minimum. Fewer debris objects below 500 kilometers. Reasonable on paper, but the exploded satellite was already at 418 kilometers. In the supposedly safer regime, if lower orbits reduce risk, why did catastrophe strike there? And why migrate the rest of the constellation toward that exact altitude band where the anomaly occurred? The descent brings more spacecraft into closer proximity to whatever infrared sources are triggering those 300,000 evasions. Unless the priority isn't fleeing danger, it's closing distance, positioning sensors for better resolution on something that only appears intermittently in thermal bands. These detections occur amid escalating orbital congestion. By early 2026, projections show low Earth orbit approaching 20,000 active satellites within years. International powers deploy their own constellations. Anti-satellite tests litter debris fields. And solar activity in the rising cycle stirs atmospheric expansion that drags objects unpredictably. Yet the infrared anomalies don't correlate neatly with known debris populations. Their thermal profiles suggest controlled energy output. Brief, directional, almost like brief firings or reflections of non-ballistic surfaces. Emerging theories in space domain awareness circles whisper about possibilities long confined to classified briefings. Non-terrestrial artifacts, unexplained orbital phenomena exhibiting apparent intelligence in avoidance patterns. Or perhaps advanced adversarial probes testing defensive perimeters without kinetic engagement. The silence from NASA amplifies every question. This is the agency that broadcasts live coverage of crewed missions, dissects Martian samples in press events, celebrates exoplanet discoveries with vivid imagery. When Russia destroyed one of its own satellites in 2021, creating thousands of debris pieces, NASA issued rapid statements, joined international condemnation, briefed Congress. When a Chinese rocket fragmented in 2024, same response: transparency, urgency. Yet on Starshield detections, on the infrared signatures that challenge orbital stability models, NASA offers zero. No press release, no technical paper, no comment on how these phenomena interact with civilian astronomy assets like Hubble or upcoming infrared observatories. An invisible boundary exists. Starshield sits firmly on the classified side. NASA will not cross. Look at the broader architecture. Starshield satellites transmit on uplink reserved bands, 2025 to 2110 MHz, in low data rate bursts that blend into background noise. International regulators reserve those frequencies for Earth-to-space commands to prevent interference chaos. Yet 170-plus units send downlink signals there. Deliberate, low observability, covert return paths for data too sensitive for standard channels. If the infrared arrays capture something extraordinary, something that demands immediate relay without exposing the collection method, those forbidden frequencies provide the perfect veil. No public complaints from other operators. Either the interference is negligible, or the knowledge carries consequences too heavy to voice. This pattern: classified sensors hunting anomalies, covert transmissions, massive maneuver counts, sudden orbit shifts, institutional silence, points to response, not routine. Something entered the picture in lower Earth orbit. Something that generates heat without standard signatures. Something that forces constant dodging. Something infrared arrays now track relentlessly. The scale suggests preparation on a civilizational level, not for missiles alone, For an environment where the rules of orbital mechanics may no longer apply solely to human hardware, low Earth orbit underpins everything: communications, navigation, weather, finance, defense. A cascade failure here, Kessler syndrome triggered by unexplained objects, could strand humanity's infrastructure in weeks. 300,000 evasions in 1 year signal acute stress. Infrared detections of unknown thermal activity signal awareness of a threat beyond current models. The silence signals calculation. They know, they watch, they maneuver, and they wait. The sensors keep staring into the dark, capturing heat blooms that shouldn't exist, transmitting through shadows nobody monitors, dodging shadows that appear without warning. NASA stays quiet because words would shatter the calm. What if the anomalies aren't threats at all? What if they represent contact, discovery, a threshold crossed without permission? Or something far older, already here, now illuminated by our own expanding eyes in orbit? We stand at the edge of revelation. The infrared data accumulates. The maneuvers continue. The silence deepens. What do you believe those sensors truly captured? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit subscribe for updates as this story unfolds in real time. Share this video with anyone who needs to see what's happening above us right now. Because whatever lurks in low Earth orbit, it no longer hides in complete darkness. And the silence won't last forever.